Hello, everyone. It is time for our weekly uncomfortable conversations. Hi, and today we have Ginevra Are as a guest, and we're going to talk about a very uncomfortable subject and a very uncomfortable topic called suicide. So, yeah, let's begin. So we're just waiting for Ginevra to join. Hi, Jean, do you hear me?
Hi, Tessie. Yes.
Oh,
Hi,
perfect.
dear.
How are you?
I'm good, thank you. It's great to be here and to be part of this. I'm super excited.
Thank you so much for wanting to have this conversation, for being here with us, with your all your expertise. So I'll let you introduce yourself. Let us know whatever you want us to know about you.
All right. So, hi, everyone. My name is Ginevra. I am originally from Italy. I lived the past 7 years of my life in California, and I've just relocated to Grass Valley, California. So, beautiful green area. And I am a holistic counselor and certified wellness life coach. So I do a little bit of like my work goes in between the field of mental health and mental wellness. But I'm also a yoga teacher, and so I incorporate a lot of somatic elements into my work, incorporating a lot of movement and breath and mindfulness. And I share holistic and wellness practices with people. And one thing that I'm super passionate about is nature and how to help people be more in touch with the elements and the seasons and just the cycle of nature, so that we're all attuned to what goes on around us.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for being here. Your journey has always been super inspiring for me, and I think that during your learning in and I think that you were part of a school, right? When you were doing your process of becoming a counselor.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and since our subject today, I think that in one of our conversations before, as friends and everything, the conversation about suicide came up, and how this is a very particularly heavy subject to discuss about, and that it's very present nowadays. It has been throughout history, I think, but right now we can see it in the statistics, and we can see it how it's affecting, for example, young people. And I don't know. So what was your experience towards with this subject, and how did you help, for example, your students when they were so overwhelmed, and when they were having this, for example, times of crisis, or so.
Yes, I mean, it is a super important topic, and I feel like it's not really talked about enough. So something we learned in one of the classes that had the biggest impact on me was when I was pursuing my master in counseling. The class that had the biggest impact on me was trauma and crisis counseling.
Mhm.
We learned everything that revolves around what people can experience, what type of traumas can people experience in their lives, and how to deal with a crisis. And what came up was that some of the biggest crises that people go through is when something happened in their life and they feel so overwhelmed that the only solution they can think of is to take their own lives,
Yeah.
right? And it is incredible how I think, especially in the US, because I come from Italy, when sometimes things are seen a little bit differently, how the US, the thing is becoming really endemic because we live in such a individualistic society. Like Italy is way more collective, and I know that you probably experienced the same with being from Mexico, right?
Yeah.
Like how family and community can act as a big support system, as a safety net.
Yes.
And I think a lot of the times this doesn't happen in the US because people relocate from one coast to the other to go to college, and then they pursue careers and they create a family somewhere else, and they can feel very, very isolated.
Yes, correct. Yes,
Yeah.
I agree with you that it's not a very discussed subject, and that is why I am, like I started bringing these subjects to the public eye in this medium that, we all use, or most of us use as, a way of presenting ourselves to the outside world or whatever. And I say, well, why not use this platform for speaking of something that is really affecting a lot of people, and how we can be of service to those communities or to those people, like where can they call, how can they cope with a situation of crisis where the only solution, as you said, was just to take your own life, right? I have problems with prepositions. English is not my first language, so please forgive me. I always mix them together. So let's put the elephant in the room. Yeah. So how do you think that it's just such a complicated thing? But I really find it important to let people know that they're not alone, and that there is no shame in looking for help, or really like you know grabbing someone to help them, maybe, and to talk about it, because there's so much shame about talking a bit about this particular issue, and this people are scared of really talking to someone.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, the statistics in the US are very clear on the fact that the majority of people who commit suicide in the US are male, men,
Wow.
men and young boys. And I think it speaks a lot to the fact that, on the other hand, the statistics of people who go to therapy and seek mental health advice are mostly women.
Mm.
So I don't know the exact percentages right now, and I know that the percentages changed a little bit during the pandemic because we had a lot more people committing suicide, especially among teens during the pandemic.
Yeah.
But I think it speaks a lot about the state of men and young men's mental health in the US, and what you were saying, Tess, about the shame part, because I feel like women, maybe it is more accepted nowadays for women to go and seek mental health support.
Yes.
Also, women tend to talk more about very difficult subjects with their friends within circles. Whereas for men, it is incredibly challenging sometimes to come out to your peers and be very vulnerable and say, hey, I am really struggling with my mental health right now. What can I do? And this could be about anything, it could be health issues, it could be relationship issues, it could be issues in the workplace, like just in general. Men tend to talk less about these things, and they tend to accumulate, and there can be so much pressure in their lives, and that the suicide then becomes or appears the only viable solution.
Yeah.
And something we learned in counseling school was that, I remember my professor said this sentence once, and it really stuck with me, which is, if you're talking to someone and you think they might be thinking about suicide, ask them. Because people tend to think that when we ask that question, are you thinking about taking your own life?
Mm-hmm.
We are increasing the chances of that person committing the act.
Okay.
But there is actually a lot of studies that prove that asking that question is way more likely to start a healing conversation that actually is going to bring that person away from committing the act.
Oh, wow, that's really powerful. Yeah, I think it comes from the fact that that person is being acknowledged, right? That person is being seen and heard, even if sometimes as a friend, or like, you know, like, as a normal person outside of the mental health department or counseling or anything, you think that you might not do a difference, but there is a difference in just acknowledging the fact that that person is struggling, and that you can, you know, simply offer the space, be a container for that person to be safe enough to speak how they feel.
Yeah.
That's so good. That's so important, I think.
Yeah, because sometimes we forget that just by listening, we are still helping someone. So it doesn't have to be that someone is skilled in counseling or helping skills, right? Like just a friend or a family member or a partner. If we learn how to listen and hold space, and just like all we need to say is like, okay, I hear you, I see you're suffering, I acknowledge your suffering. People really just want to be acknowledged, as you said, and heard and seen. We don't have to fix anyone's problems.
Exactly. Yes, yes. I agree with you. How important it's just to sit with the uncomfortable feeling, right? And to not want to make it any better or fix that person, because that person is just wanting maybe an escaping mode of just venting the feelings, and to be just, you know, like held by the other person and by held, it doesn't have to be physical per se, but just held in the perspective of, like you said, oh, I hear you. Oh, I'm sorry that you're going through that process. Do you want to talk more about this? Would you like me to go with you in search for a counselor? Would you want me to like be there for you in this process of healing? You know, like it's that it's, I think it's the biggest thing that we can do for someone who's struggling with either mental health or suicidal ideas or anything. Yeah.
It is complicated, but I think sometimes the majority of people who might not be trained in helping skills or counseling or mental health, like the majority of people, it seems to be that they fear bringing up the subject, as I said earlier, because of the fear that, oh, if I bring up the subject, there's going to be more chances that this person does something. It is actually before someone actually commits suicide. There are many steps. And the first steps is having the suicidal thoughts or ideation.
Okay.
Which a lot of people can have. Like I have had those myself in the past, like very hard times of my life in which I couldn't see the light at the end of the tunnel. And the pain was so much that I thought, okay, I want to get out of this pain. Maybe I should just disappear. You know, wanting to disappear, wanting to not being part of this world, not wanting anyone to see me in my pain. Those thoughts are very common. The majority of people in their life at some point might experience these thoughts of, I don't want to be seen by anyone and I just want to disappear.
Yeah.
That idea of wanting to disappear, wanting to maybe not being in the world, it's very different from having a plan. So that's the next step, is I go from those ideas to making a plan for me to take my own life. And the following step is not just making a plan, but having the means to do it. So how am I going to do it? At what time? In which place? Am I going to leave a note? Am I going to let people know this is going to happen? That is having a plan and then having the means. Am I going... And please let me know, Tess, if I'm being too graphic. I don't want
No. Please do. Please.
But, you know, like if someone decides to hang themselves, do they have the ropes? Did they decide where to do it? If someone decides to shoot themselves, do they have access to a gun? Before someone actually does it, there are so many things and so many steps that the likelihood becomes less and less and less. And the more people tend to talk about it, the less they're going to go into those other steps.
Yeah.
So if someone is very isolated and they're very stuck in their mind, they might go farther and farther into the rabbit hole, starting to make a plan and then getting the means necessary to do it. But as soon as people start talking about it, because they're having a conversation and hopefully they're held and supported, they're not going to go to the following steps.
Yeah.
So the more we talk about it, actually, the better it is.
Yeah, yeah. I had recently the experience. Right now, I'm sharing my living space with a couple of students, and one of their peers committed suicide. And they say that they were going to have a memorial for this person via Zoom, like via the college, right? And they were really upset because it was really poorly handled by the administration. They didn't want to say what happened. They didn't want to talk about it. They just made it even worse for the community. And they were really outraged because it's like, well, first, we didn't know anything that this person was going through that problem. But then once it happened, people do everything to mask that. And that brings even more shame and more remorse and difficulty for the families and for the members that are left to process it. Because then it becomes already like a social problem that, my daughter committed suicide and I cannot even talk about it because it's like a sin or something that, like it's really being judged by a different lens than not just by the lens that maybe we could ask ourselves if our counselors or if our system at school is providing for these young people the support that they need. Instead of making it, no, it's like the family's fault or the girl's fault or whatever, like it's just something that really I don't know why the big people in charge of different places and administrations, and they do not put a finger on if they see that the problem is rising and it's becoming a serious issue, right? It just escapes me.
Yeah, it really is, because I mean, I think oftentimes it comes down to stigma. So for some reason or another, and I don't want to get too much into religion, but
yeah,
in many religions, suicide is seen as the ultimate sin. Like you are given a life from God and you are rejecting the life that God gave you.
Yes.
So this sin, if someone ends up committing suicide, this sin then trickles down into the family and into the community. And there is this sense of survivor's guilt that people can feel and often feel because they think, oh, I should have done something. I should have done better. I should have known. I should have seen the sign. And so people feel so much survival guilt and shame of having survived and not having help that they don't talk about it. And they don't have real conversations about it.
Yeah.
And yeah, it happened to me too. Like in the institution where I worked as a college counselor for a couple of years at the university where I was studying. And one of my students, I was following this case of a young girl. She must have been 18. I think she was a sophomore in college, and she attempted suicide. Mm-hmm. And the whole community started talking about it. Mm-hmm. In a way that it almost felt like people were scapegoating other people.
Yeah. Okay. Mm.
Right? Like, oh, you should have done, you should have known, you should have. And then no one was really talking about how to help her. It was almost as if because the attempt wasn't successful, almost like she had done something wrong. And then people were angry at her for what she done. And that was incredibly challenging. And I didn't have enough tools at the time to deal with the case. So my supervisor took care of the case.
Yeah. Were you still involved in the back of the case that you could see how that could be handled, for example?
Yes,
Yes.
yes. I I got trained because of this, and really what came up in the conversation with my supervision cases and meetings was really, I was wondering what could I have done better as a helper to help this girl before. Was there something I didn't see?
Okay.
And really what really struck me that my supervisor said was, whether it's in your work or in your family, if someone attempts that, remember that it's an individual choice. No one should ever be blamed because suicide happens.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, it is an individual choice.
Yes.
And at the same time, this is the dichotomy. It's an individual choice, and at the same, as a community, we have the obligation to look out for each other and ask this question and have these conversations like we're doing today.
Yes. Yes, correct. Yeah, to just, yeah. It's just start, and then you can see. I find it incredibly fascinating, the fact that, what you were saying about then everybody just blaming one another, right? Because it feels like such an automatic response from society that I've seen from my own experience and from other experiences, that everybody just starts like tossing the ball instead of focusing on the person that is still alive, still suffering, and is still going through all of the thoughts that were before having the means to commit the act, and going through all of those steps that you were talking about, and then having survived the attempt, and then having to carry with the shame and with all of the things that it's revolving around them. But it's never about helping them. It's always about like everybody else's experience around the case. And I really find that, fascinating, not in a good way, not in a positive way, I would say, but maybe we should, as societies, start asking us these questions and really looking to one another and say, where are we missing the point here? Like, why are we missing the focus?
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of the times, and of course I'm generalizing here, when people really, really think about suicide and maybe even attempt at it, it is not because they have given up on themselves. It's because they have given up on their community. Because if I am going to speak in first person, right? If I am going through a terrible time of my life and I have zero self-esteem, I don't believe that I'm capable of good things. I don't believe that I'm capable of succeeding. Maybe my health is bad and I'm dealing with some chronic condition, but the quality of my relationships is good. That's going to be my light, the quality of my relationships. I cannot have a lot of self-love and self-esteem, but if I love my friends and I'm loved by my friends, by my family, by my parents, by my partner, I know that I'm going to be supported as I learn how to cope with a difficult life. Okay. But if I am alone and isolated and I don't have self-esteem, I don't have self-compassion, I don't love myself, I don't like myself, and the quality of my relationships is very poor, the moment that I give up on others is the moment that I could potentially really give up on life. And that's, yeah, I mean, that's going back to what you were saying, right? Like, when someone does attempt suicide, like, not shaming them, but asking, how can we move forward? How can we support you? How can we be of support? How can we be your safety net as you recover? Because we're not going to be able to heal you, but we can take your hand and walk with you hand in hand while you do your own work to get better.
Yes, yes. And that changes everything. that makes a whole difference, because then you're no longer alone in your disgrace, you know, like in like this feeling of that you're failed, or that you're broken, or that you're defective, you know, all of these things that come after surviving and entering or deciding to enter the process of healing. Yeah, well, I don't know, like besides all this that we're saying, like, what do you have any advice for young people that are going through this process, or for like people that have that encounter anyone? I think there's a few telephone numbers that you can call in case of distress. When you're experiencing a heavy crisis, you can call and have support from that person in the other side of the line, right? But I don't know what other things, like for example, if I was experiencing that with the students that I share my apartment with, what can I do? Or what can I, what, you know, what can I say? How do I make it easier or supportive for them?
Yeah, this is a great question, because I think a lot of people wonder the same, right? When start thinking about it, and it's one of the reasons why maybe this topic is not very discussed, is because people don't know what to do.
Yeah.
So I think sometimes when we're trying to help someone who's going through a crisis like that, and maybe they are thinking about taking their own lives, we think that we have to be the ones who have to get them out of the black hole. But the truth is, the support lines, the hotlines, the suicidal lines, and the main one that I would recommend everyone to sort of maybe save their number on their phone, or just look it up online at the last minute, is just Google National Suicide Hotline. Okay. And it's a free number that anyone can call from a mobile phone or from a landline. And the person who is struggling doesn't have to be the one who calls. So for example, for you, Tessie, like if one of your, because that's the unfortunate thing about suicide, is that it is endemic, which means that once someone attempts or successfully commits suicide in the community, there's going to be more people thinking about it and potentially doing it. So now the students who are living with you might be going through, should I also do it? Right? So if you ever find yourself with them in a moment in which you see them struggling, the first thing to do is ask them the question. Really ask them, even almost cold turkey, because asking is always better than not asking.
Yeah.
So the first thing is, are you thinking about taking your own life? And if they say yes, the second question is, do you have a plan? And 80% of the times, the response to do you have a plan is no. 80% of the times, the response is, no, I don't have a plan. I don't really want to do it. I'm just thinking about it.
Okay.
And thinking about it, as I was saying earlier, is very different from wanting to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So if they say, I'm just thinking about it, then you can say, would you like to talk about it? I can listen. And really just listen. If the response is, yes, I'm thinking about it and I'm already making a plan, then the responsibility sort of has to get out of your hand and into professionals. So you say, okay, I hear that that's going on for you. Let's call this number together. You take your phone and you Google the National Suicide Hotline, you call the number, and when they say, how can I help you? I say, hi, I'm sitting here with my friend. We were just having a conversation. They shared that they're thinking about suicide and they have a plan. Can I pass them to you on the phone? You know, and then you literally pass the phone and you sit with a friend while they have a conversation with a professional.
Mm-hmm.
And most of the time that is highly successful because the people on the hotline are highly trained. They go through a 6 months intensive training for knowing what to say and how to, there's a whole system to like, first they diverge the thoughts, they ask people how was their day, what's going on. It's like a mini therapy intensive session.
Wow.
That gets people out of that loop. So it's not your responsibility as a friend to have that conversation. It's too much to put on your shoulders.
Yes.
But being them and passing the phone to them and say, hey, here, talk to someone who can help you, can be extremely effective.
Wow. Thank you so much, Ginevra, for giving us that example and guideline, because sometimes you really you feel helpless. You feel like, okay, well, maybe I don't have the skills, so maybe how can I help? Maybe I'll be more detrimental or judgmental without wanting to be, and I make it worse, like okay, I have another heavy question for you. What do you think that it's very complicated, because I also had the experience with a close family member recently about this, and I couldn't find the words after, I couldn't, I was there, and I said, it is not your fault. It is, it is something that happened because the person couldn't see an alternative to what they were experiencing inside, but it wasn't your fault, and I'm here for you if you need any help. But I don't know if that was enough, or if that felt condescending, like it was just such a delicate thing, and in such a close relationship with one of my family members that I didn't really know how to react or do or say. You feel stupid saying things, like you feel like, how did I say this? Why did I say that? So what do you think? What do you advise?
Thank you for sharing that. So your family member had someone else close to them commit suicide?
Yes.
It's, I think sometimes when we see people struggling a lot, because they look so helpless, they look in so much pain, and they look so helpless, that maybe we want to take their pain away. But I think sometimes we forget that people know themselves. The majority of people, unless we're talking about a teenager, but the majority of people know themselves and know what's helpful. So even just asking the simple question, what would be of help right now? What would be of help right now? And can I take some of this load of you? Is there anything practical that I can take care of for you while you process your pain? Because it is not our responsibility to process our loved ones' pains for them. And not only is it not our responsibility, it's impossible. Like it doesn't happen. I wish my own experience, I wish that I could take the pain away from people I love. Yeah. But even asking, how can I help you right now? What do you need from me? What can I do for you? And let them say what they need. If they say that they don't know, because sometimes when people are in a lot of pain, they're very confused. If they say, I don't know, then say, okay, can I keep you company while you figure it out? And if there is nothing that they can think of at that time, maybe say, okay, make a plan to meet with them. And I think this is helpful both for people who have someone in their lives commit suicide, or someone who is a survivor of suicide. So someone who had a plan, they attempted suicide and they survived. And now they're struggling with their own internalized shame of having failed at the very thing they wanted to achieve. Make a plan in the short term Opening up with them, and then follow up.
Okay.
Like, why don't we go take a walk at the beach or at the park in 3 days? And then in 2 days, call them and say, hey, we have scheduled a call, a walk, or sometimes in Zoom times needs to be a call. Are you still up for it? So show up. Show up in the way that you can become sort of an anchor for them while they do their own work.
Yeah. Wow, that's really, really extremely helpful. I think so. Well, at least for me. To not go into the mode of, oh, let me fix this. Let me fix this. Let me fix this. So yeah. Well, oof, it's a hard topic to process, and I just wanna tell you how grateful I am for your openness, for being here, for really wanting to talk about this. And if there's anything that you want to add, please feel free. I don't know what else to. I think that I asked the questions that I had, but I will still be here to talk about more things if you want. Just let me know.
Yeah. So something that's coming up for me is something that I've learned from my own lived experience. Because a year and a half ago, I had someone very, very close to me going through a mental breakdown.
Okay.
And I've seen their mental health degrading and degrading and degrading. And because of their tendencies and because of the way they handle life, I thought that they were gonna kill themselves. I thought they were gonna take their own lives, either consciously or unconsciously. And because I was very close to this person, everything started being very enmeshed and intertwined. And only by talking to other friends, then I started asking friends to check in with this person, because I started to not trust my own judgment. Okay. And as I did that, I realized that the image that I had in my mind of what they were going through was actually way worse than what they were actually going through. So all my ideas of, oh my God, this person is going to kill themselves, there's something bad is going to happen. I remember this huge tightness in my chest, thinking that this person's life was in my hand and I had to save them. And then when I would talk to other people, they were like, no, they're not that bad. They're struggling, but they're not thinking about committing suicide.
Okay.
So I think sometimes we can project our own worries. We can become very protective of the people that we love. And we can build all these, castle in the sky of ideas and fears, when actually what we really should do is have a conversation with the people we're worried about, instead of already deciding for them that that's what they're going to do.
Yes. Wow.
Yeah. Sometimes we make it, by wanting to help, we can make it, by wanting to help too much, we can make it worse, because we can make fears more real, and really just asking questions with curiosity and open-mindedness.
Yeah, that building up that skill, right? And they're very important to build that skill of communication back and forth. Just asking a question, waiting for the answer, processing the answer, and saying, okay, I hear what you're saying. Maybe reply the answer back to the person. I hear that you're going through this process, whatever the thing they said, and then how can I support you right now? How can I be here for you right now? And then let the other person let the other person to process this information, answer you back, take a moment to digest that information, and decide what the next step will be. Because I think that that's a skill to acquire and to practice as much as we practice yoga and, heavy weights and going to the park for a run or whatever. We need to practice this active listening skill, because sometimes we just talk and talk and talk and talk, or want to come with a solution. Oh, this is what you should do, or this is what I think you should do, instead of just offering the space for the person to be and to exist.
Yeah.
Wow. That's so beautiful. Yeah. And thank you for sharing that. Thank you for being vulnerable about that. It's not always easy to share experiences that are so close to us in such a broad place and medium, right? But I really thank you for being here, and I appreciate your time, and that we both, at least in this mini conversation, maybe can offer someone a little bit of a space, of a safe space to talk about suicide, and talk about what happens between, before, after, and to break the taboo and make it a little bit more accessible for everyone, since it's something that it's innate to the human experience, and it might happen to us, it might happen to someone near us, it might happen to someone that we know in 20 years. We don't know. So yeah, thank you so much for being here and for opening that space for this conversation. I'm really grateful for you.
Thank you, Tessie. Thank you for inviting me. And because I asked you this, like, when you invited me, I thought perhaps I wasn't even qualified enough to talk about it, right? Because I have a master in counseling, but I'm not a licensed mental health therapist. And I was like, oh my God, maybe someone else is more qualified. But then I remember what my professor told us in school, which is, have this conversation. It doesn't matter your credential. It doesn't matter who you are. The more people talk about it, the less shame there is, the less stigma, the less taboo it becomes. So we need to have this conversation. So thank you for creating this space, for bringing this up, really.
Thank you. Thank you for showing up and for being here and for being so courageous and vulnerable at the same time. It was my pleasure to have you here.
Thank you, Tessie.
Well, we took a little less than expected, but that's fine. That's okay, And thank you to everyone who was listening or viewing this conversation. I will put it in the feed so that everybody can have access to this. And if you want to share it with someone, I'll be very, very pleased. I will also, in the comments of this video, I will put the number, the national suicide number, for you to access it. Everybody who needs it or are just curious about what this is, then I thank you, and I hope that you have an excellent rest of your day, because it looks sunny where you are and you have a beautiful plant next to you.
Yes, it is. It's still, what is it, like, I don't know, it's 5 something in California, so we still have some good time of sun, so a few hours of sun.
Beautiful.
Something else that actually came to mind, if I can add something.
Absolutely.
Else that just came to mind is, when you have those, when it happens that people have these uncomfortable conversations about suicide with others, like I already mentioned how important it is to follow up.
Yes.
Like make a plan for the person in the short term to meet up again, so that they don't feel fully isolated and they have something to look forward to. But something else very important is start to try to make them think about something they're looking forward to in the longer term. And in that moment, when they're in a dark place, they might not see anything. But we can like help our friends to see like, okay, what is something that you're looking forward to? And perhaps in a pandemic time, things that people used to look forward to are not accessible. Going to the movie, oh, I was so looking forward to that movie coming out next month, and now I cannot go to see it. So nothing makes sense. So try to like rule out one thing after another until they find something that they look forward to that they can actually do. Whether it's watching a movie at home or taking a short walk around the neighborhood, like very, very simple things, and make them sign a little contract with you. A little contract that says, between now and this time next week, I will have done this single act. Because it can sound very like, oh my God, I'm gonna make them do a contract. Like, this sounds so weird. But that little contract can make a huge difference, because they make this little promise to themselves and to you that in 1 week they're gonna do one simple action to take care of themselves, to make themselves happy. And during that week, it's less likely that they're gonna think about implementing a plan for taking their own lives. It's more likely that they're gonna think about how to spend their time when they do their self-love act.
Oh, yeah, that's so beautiful. That is really beautiful. Thank you for that tip. It's yeah, wow. It's just taking it further, I think, because
Yeah.
you've done already like the principal thing, but then how can you keep up with your friends or with your family members or with anyone that is going through this process without being invasive, and with also giving them the possibility of having a companionship, and also finding some joy maybe in that process, because there's the idea that comes from them of the thing they want to do. That's so beautiful. Thank you so much for that.
Welcome. Yeah, just something else popped up and I was like, oh yeah, I should mention that too, because that can be very helpful.
It is. It is. Well, Jean, I send you a lot of love. I give you all my heart, a lot of kisses, and I hope that you will still enjoy the rest of your day, and that you have a lot of plenty activities with
Yeah.
and yes, I'll send you a lot of love, and thank you so much for doing this with me.
Thank you for inviting me, Tess. It's been a pleasure, even though it's a bit triggering. Now I'm thinking about everything that I went through in my life around this topic, but I feel better talking about it. So
Yes,
thank you so much.
thank you.
Mwah. Big hugs from California.
Big
Bye,
hugs from New York. Stay safe.
Bye.
Bye.